Hey everybody, welcome to my first official episode of Leadership and Mental Wellbeing in the Workplace. My name is Poiab, and I'm the founder of Your Own Pathways. So, again, I want to thank all of you for officially being here on my first episode of the series that I am just recently started. And I said this in my other video, which I will also linked in the description box. But I wanted to really start this series back in 2024, but there were so many things going on, and I was a little hesitant because I was thinking, are we ready? Are people ready to talk about mental well-being in the workplace and leadership? Because it's ongoing. There's a lot of things going on, and in January, I was like, you know what? It's time. It's time that we need to talk about these things in the workplace because there's so many things going on. And in order for us to learn and do better and be better, we have to start talking about this and taking ownership of it. So that's why I decided to start this series. And I think for all of us, or even for me to understand why I did this, I need to go back at the beginning to talk about my own journey of why this topic is so important to me and why I even want to do this. And so, for those who don't know, I am a psychotherapist. I have my master's degree in social work, and I've been in the workforce since 2008, like right before the economic crisis. This is when I got my first job. And so it's been about 17 years. Holy moly, 17 years. And I'm not going to lie, I've had lots of bosses. I've had lots of bosses from 2008 to about 2021. I probably had about like seven bosses, and that's a lot of bosses. I'm not going to lie. And I've had potential bosses call out on that for me, and they've said, you've had a lot of jobs, you're a job jumper, like why should we hire you? And I wasn't intimidated by that question because honestly, all of that helped me to be who I am and where I am today. And so, needless to say, I had a lot of bosses, and that has taught me a lot of things too. And so that's why I wanted to bring this episode to talk about what I learned from all the bosses that I've had. And so I would say that the toughest time period for me in dealing in my professional and my personal life was between about 2017 to 2020. So that was like 8 to 5 years ago. And during that time, it was really hard for me because that was a time period in which I was receiving clinical supervision in order for me to get my supervised hours so that I can become a therapist. Even though I've been in the field for about almost 10 years, I did not have those clinical hours. And at the time, I was residing in Wisconsin, and then I moved to Minnesota. And so, for any therapist who is watching this, y'all can, y'all can say, yeah, it's hard to get your clinical hours. And if you're in profession, a lot of medical professions, we have to have certain number of hours before we can move on. And so during 2017 to 2020, that was the hardest years of my professional life, which of course impact my personal life. And so I wanted to talk more about that, about what did I learn from my bad bosses. And I just want to say that I'm doing this episode not to blame them, not to shame them, not to make them feel bad. If they are watching this, this is very much a learning experience about for me, and also how I want to proceed as a boss and as a leader, and how what I learned from these bosses is like, you know what? I know there's so much in my control that I can't control, and what I can't control. And here's the things that I'm going to control, even though there are lots of things out of our control, especially when we work in a system that we did not create. So let's get going on this. So, the first thing that I learned from my bad bosses is that I learned that sometimes the system made them a bad boss. And sometimes, a lot of times as a boss, and especially as a middle manager, we have no control. It's hard to be a middle manager and you're just taking orders from, your higher up. And so you are stuck. And I learned that bad bosses are made in bad systems. And when you're in a system that is bad, eventually you're going to be bad too. And when I say bad, I don't mean that you're a bad person. You adopt the bad policies, you adopt the bad leadership techniques, and because that's how it's trickled down to you. And so I learned that a lot of bad bosses became bad. Like they had good intentions, they wanted to be different, and yet the system failed them. And so that they too became bad bosses. And one of the examples was in 2017 to 2018, I worked for a nonprofit community care mental health care system. And we were so short staffed. We were so behind. We had so many people with so many needs. And we were one of the few agencies that were available in that community. And so we didn't have the staff to support the community, and as a result we had to do more with less, and we did a lot less. And so because we couldn't meet the demand, they demanded more and more and more from the providers. And when you couldn't meet that threshold or that productivity, often the consequence was that you were put on a plan, you got talked to, they were like, what can we do, you're not doing enough. You work, you need to do quality work, but at the same time, why aren't you working faster? So it was this never ending hamster wheel because the system was not there, or the system could not support what it needed to provide within the community. And yet, though, that did not excuse their lack of empathy, their lack of willingness to collaborate, or their lack of or not willing to listen to why I felt the way I felt and how or what I needed in my role so that I could succeed. That did not excuse any of that. So, number one, sometimes bad bosses are made because of a failing system. So, I actually thought about this just today while I was, creating this outline, and I was like, you know, sometimes people are I'm sure they were lovely human beings outside of work, and yet because of this system, they became who they probably didn't want to be, but had to be in a failing system. So that's number one, is that sometimes bad bosses are made because of failing systems. Number two, what did I learn from bad bosses? I learned to advocate for myself. And I actually had a conversation earlier with someone who is also a social worker and who's in the therapy field. And we were taught to empower our clients to advocate for themselves, to speak up, to challenge the status quo. And yet, as social workers and therapists, we're terrible at this. We're terrible at advocating for ourselves. We're terrible at speaking up for ourselves and what we need. We're terrible at that. We are, I think we're the epitome of do as I say, not what I do. Is that right? Like, we talk, but we can't do the walk. And yet we expect our clients to do all of that. And if we can't do it ourselves, like what good are we? And so in having bad bosses, especially from 2017 to 2020, I learned to advocate for myself. Now, did that like the avocation, like helped me? Not really, but I spoke what I felt. I spoke up, I said what I felt, and even though it was not well received, I don't regret it. I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret expressing how I feel. And I'm glad that I said what I said, even though it probably got me in trouble or, it got me fired or whatever. That's another story that's a story for another day here. And so, even though there were consequences, I don't regret it. I don't regret advocating for myself. I do not regret saying what I said. And I don't regret my actions. And I'm going to be real here when I say that because I look a certain way, because I don't have a name that is, because my name is unique. My name is Poiab. I think that a lot of my bosses made assumptions that because of my name, because of how I looked, that I was not going to speak up, that I was not going to advocate for myself. And when I didn't fit the stereotype of what they assumed for me and I spoke up, I think they were taken back and almost in a way, were, I don't want to say threatened, but they were like challenged by it. They made assumptions that, oh, I would just do it, that I would feel gratitude and be grateful. And, I did that. I did do that. I did try to do that. I tried so hard. And at some point, you just can't do it anymore. And there came to a point when I was like, I can't just be quiet anymore. I just can't, where I just you know what they say, like, keep your head down, just go do your work. I did all that. I tried all of that. And when it got to the point where I said, you know what, I can't do that anymore. I can't just nod and say, yep, I accept that. I had to speak out for myself. I had to advocate for myself. And when I did that, my bosses did not like that I stood up for myself and that I spoke for myself. So number two lessons I learned from bad bosses was I learned to advocate for myself. Number three kind of goes with number two. I realized that I had power. I had so much power, and so many people think that because this is a working relationship, that this is a job, that you don't have power. You, as an employee, have so much power, and you don't realize that. And it's so easy to say, you know what? Yes, your boss can make you do things. Yes, they can fire you. Yes, there can be dire consequences, but you are also, you have power. You're an employee. And I realize that a lot of people don't think about this, but being an employee, that's a relationship. Like having an employer, that's a relationship too. And it's a two-way street. It's not just one way, it's a two-way street. And because it's a two-way street, you get to walk away and you get to say to yourself, I accept this or I don't accept it. We look at family relationships, we look at our friendships, we look at our romantic relationships. If something doesn't work for us anymore, we walk away. And your employer relationship is like that too. You get to walk away when you want to. You get to walk away when you're not getting what you need. You get to walk away when you're not being treated well. And I realized that with both jobs, and especially my job in 2020 when I worked for the federal system. I realized I had so much power, and that even though this was a job and I was getting paid, just because I was getting paid, it did not mean that I had to accept less than. It did not mean that I had to accept abuse. It did not mean that I had to accept name calling. It did not mean that I had to accept anything that did not feel aligned with me emotionally, mentally, any of that. And I was worthy of respect, and I deserve to be treated with dignity and with respect. And because I'm an employee, I have the power and I can say, you know what? I'm going to walk away. This job no longer fits me. Job is no longer healthy for me. And I get to walk away. And you, as a team or a job, you lost an investment, because that means that you have to, if you're going to hire, you're going to have to hire someone else. You're going to have to, put in the resources. You're going to have to train. You're going to lose someone, and somebody else has to take over my job duties for 6 months, 5 months, because, when you work for the federal system, you have to wait that long before you can get a job. So, um, essentially, they lost me. It wasn't just that I lost them. They lost me. And so I think we have to start thinking of that way, that jobs, our bosses, our place of employment lose us. We didn't lose them. They lost us, which we were their biggest asset. So, point number 3, I had power. I had power. And so remember, whoever is watching this, remember that you do have power. Next point is boundaries. Boundaries is one of my favorite things to talk about and implement. And so, boundaries in 2025 is a big word now. And back in 2020, like 2017 to 2020, I think boundaries was just something that we really didn't talk about. We knew what it was, but we really didn't talk about it. And so, I learned to have professional boundaries, and I learned to finally say no. Before my professional boundaries, I was a go getter. I wanted to show that I could be a team player, that I was well rounded. I could do three, four people's jobs. And if people were sick, don't worry, I got you. I can do all of this. If you need me, I'm your go to person. And unfortunately, what I learned is I got taken advantage of. I was convenient for other people. And even though I was convenient and I was a go getter, that was not being reciprocated back to me when I needed help. And what did I get instead? Anger, resentment. And I initially got mad. I initially got mad at them, and I realized, you know what? You don't, you have to have boundaries. You have to learn how to say no. You need to say, nope, I'm not going to do this. And so once I established my professional boundaries, I became less angry. I went in and did my work, came in at 7 a.m., left at 3:30. And if I did not have to stay late, no, I'm not going to. Even if I had to, I would take off early the next day because I'm like, I put in more work. And so I have professional boundaries. And what I got out of this was that I realized that with my professional boundaries, my lack of professional boundaries, that I often got gaslighted, I often got micromanaged, and I often got undermined. And when this was happening to me, I didn't realize that this was happening to me until you got out of it and you realize, I went through all of that. And at that time, I thought that I was feeling that way, and yet I dismissed it. And so, for anybody who is watching this who feels that, am I being gaslighted? I am definitely being micromanaged. Am I being undermined? Am I just oversensitive? Am I taking this wrong? Trust your intuition. If you are feeling a certain way about a coworker or about your boss and how you're feeling, trust it. Trust your intuition. Know that you're not wrong. Know that you're not oversensitive. Know that you're not being dramatic. Know that you're not just, taking other people's words the wrong way. If you feel how you're feeling, own it and say, you know what? This is happening to me and something needs to change. So, trust your gut, trust your intuition. You do not deserve to be emotionally and psychologically abused. And yes, I know that's hard for people to hear. When we think of abuse, we think of physical or some kind of physical harm of abuse, but abuse comes in different ways. And especially in the workplace, it often comes in emotional and psychological abuse. So that is point number 4, I believe. And the last point that I wanted to point out about what I learned from bad bosses. I learned that I was not responsible for their emotions. And I'll explain. So, when I quit my job in 2020, right before COVID, And I had a conversation with my boss about how I did not feel supported, how I felt that she was not being an effective leader. And I said that all that in our meeting. And when I provided my 2 weeks notice, I got this long email from my boss, my then boss, and they were asking me about how they could have been a better boss, how they could have been like support me better, what they could have done differently. And I read this long email and I thought, do you really have that lack of self awareness? I told you all of this. Like, I told you all of this during our last meeting. And now you're putting your emotions onto me. I'm not responsible for your emotions. I'm not responsible for your unresolved issues or whatever it is that you're going through. I'm not responsible for whatever you're carrying from your personal life to your professional life. And somehow I was a recipient of whatever unresolved issues that you're going through. I am not responsible for that. And for any leadership or any boss who is watching this, if you're feeling that, I recommend you go get therapy, go get coaching, go seek mentorship, whoever it is that can help you um, process your thoughts, your feelings, whatever it is. Do not put your emotions on your employees. Because as a boss, as a leader, please be aware of your own emotions or your lack of, your self awareness. Go work on that. It is not your employee's job to answer those questions for you. And so I learned that I was not responsible for their emotions or whatever it is that they were going through. And for leadership to change, if you're a boss, middle management, you're the owner, CEO, whatever it is so, so important for you to get coaching, get therapy, get mentorship so that these people can help guide you or can help you process whatever it is that you are going through. Because if you don't, and this is how you show up, like how my ex boss is, my ex bosses or boss did, you're going to lose your employees. You're going to lose really good people who are a huge investment to your team and to your organization. And you're going to lose all that investment. You're going to lose all that hard work. You're going to lose good people. And you're going to be in this vicious cycle of always trying to find people. So, those are the things that I learned from my bad bosses. And you, anybody's watching this, like, what did you learn from your bad bosses? Or did you learn anything? And if you're a boss, what else would you like to add? Or for anyone who's gone through this, please put in the comments about like your own experience. And the more we talk about this, the more we can own it and we can be better. So that is all for today. And stay tuned for more episodes. I really enjoyed about this. This is the beginning of why I'm so passionate about this. And so this was definitely more about me. And I feel as though I think it's important to share my story. It's so important to share my story and my journey on why I'm here today because honestly, I mean, I've been through a lot. I've been through a lot, and my intention is to really teach and also talk about my live and learn experiences so that I can better educate and inform all of you who is watching this about this topic and why mental well-being is so important in the workplace. So, again, thank you. And if you're new to my channel and if you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like and subscribe button. But otherwise, I will see you all next time and take care.